Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Today's guest is the great Marshall Grant. Marshall has given us some great insight in other clips about how Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two became the megastars that they did from very, very humble beginnings. Two mechanics and an appliance salesman went to the top of the music business. But the other side of the story is not as easy to see and listen to. In this clip, Marshall tells about the heartache that's involved when someone becomes addicted to drugs and what it puts not only that person through, but their friends and their family. I hope that this keeps just one person from going down that same path. Marshall Grant.
You know, a lot of this started right here, but as time went by, you know, and when we lived here, we all know that John had a little drug habit, but not when we lived here. But as time went along, and we were equal partners, and I've explained how we started, and it was a partnership all the way between Johnny Cash, Luther Perkins, and myself, signed, sealed, and delivered. But as time went along, John decided, hey, I need this money, and what I needed it for to support his drug habit. But don't nobody get me wrong. John R. Cash was one of the greatest, if not the greatest man I ever knew in my life when he was straight. You can't say enough good things about him. You really can't, and that's the man I love. However, if we were sitting here talking and maybe he wanted to go to the bathroom, he said, I've got to go to the bathroom, and he'd stay there in about 10 minutes. And then when he came back out, you turned all of this good side of him 180 degrees. And then you had the other man. And we had problems. Not only did he and I have problems, but everybody had problems with him, including his mother, his dad, his wife, his children. Everybody had a problem with him because this great man would make 180. So 180 and 180 means great on this end, terrible on this end. But as time went along, and I quote these things in my book, and I don't try to hide any of them. As time went along, his condition just tore the organization apart, including me. And so we split in March of 1980. We split, and it was hard. It was very, very hard. But he had sort of done away with all of the money, his share, my share, and Luther's share, even though we were living all right, but day to day to day to day to day, because you just had to get a hold of as much as you could legally to survive off of. But he kept getting rid of it, kept getting rid of it. And so, but the drugs completely went away the day that John Carter was born, which was March 3rd of 1970. Went away, like that, gone. And here this great man is. Well, everything came back together. It came back together. Everybody fell in behind him, and this great man resurfaced. And he was almost like Jesus Christ. And it stayed that way. We had everything that you could ever hope for in a career. The Johnny Cash TV show, #1 record right after another. Everything just exploded. You know, the album that Folsom kicked it off in '68, but he was still a little wired up. But in '70 it was exploded. All of that stuff happened, and it stayed away until the late '70s, about 1978. And one day we were doing a show up on the Eastern Seaboard. And as always, the band and myself would come in early, and a limousine would pick John up and bring him to the concert. I walked in the back door for an 8 o'clock concert at about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And the door guard said, Mr. Cash's band, that he's already here. And my heart fell in my throat. I said, oh no, because never, I knew him too well to know something was wrong. Because he never come to the show until the limousine come to pick him up. That was a routine, not something you work out on day by day by day, but it's an itinerary. So I started down a little hallway to the stage, and he came off the stage. And when he saw me, he darted in this little room. I went out on stage and set my attaché case down, walked in that little dressing room, and we hadn't spoken yet. And he was sitting on a table in that dressing room, sort of dodging me. And I sat down on another, and the first words I said to him, "John, tell me one thing. Why? 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 After all these years, totally clean, and here, all of a sudden, for no reason, you're right back." And he very abruptly said, "Marshall," said, "you had never been through the change of life, have you?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, John. I'm 4 years older than you, but I don't think so." And I said, "I don't think that's what's wrong with you either." He said, "You'll see. Tomorrow, you'll see." And he said, "Tomorrow, you'll be so shameful, you'll get on your knees before me and you apologize." I said, "John, I'll tell you what. If tomorrow that happens, I will get down on my knees in front of you and beg for forgiveness for what I'm saying right now to you. But you know, son, I don't think tomorrow will ever come. I think this is the beginning of the end of our career, of you, your family, me, and everything." That's 78. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then when it got so bad it couldn't get any worse, it got worse. Destroyed everybody in the organization, his family, me, June. Came down on June and me harder because we fought it harder than anybody. If we get him in a hotel, if he'd pass out, we'd search his room till we found him, flush him. And for that, he hated the both of us. So it kept on going like that until March 3rd, 1980. We did a show in Houston, and it was to go home. I had a private jet take him home, but instead of going home, he dropped June and the Carter family off in Nashville, and he went on to New York, and he wrote me a horrible letter. A horrible letter. Everything backward. Because now things are in bad shape, and he needed my income to support his drug habit. So things fell apart. And in order to make it right, there's a right and there's a wrong, and there's nothing in between these two things. I've always said that. Right, wrong, nothing. So I had to litigate him. So one night I walked the second house, not this house, but the next one, Judge Horace Parati, who witnessed a lot of what went on here. And I told him, and I showed him this letter. And he said, "Marshall, no, you don't have to take this. No, and you're not going to take this." He said, "I'll call you, and I'll tell you what we're going to do." But 3 days later, he called me. He said, "Marshall, can you come up tonight?" I said, "Yes, sir." I come to his house, second door up there. Come in and sit down, and we talked a little bit about it. Showed him the documents of everything that I said. I had my little wife Etta, who's a pack rat, kept everything, and it clearly everything was documented. And so there was nothing left. I gave him every opportunity in the world to let's settle these things out of court, and not to go back there because I knew I never could do that. And so we fought it not in the courtroom, but outside the courts for 9 years. And at the end of 9 years, just as the attorney said, just before we were getting ready to walk in the courthouse, they figured it was better for the attorneys to work out some sort of agreement, and which they did. Now, that's not to say that I got all of the money that he owed me, because that's beside the point. The point was that now I'm the manager of the Statler Brothers, the great, phenomenal Statler Brothers that I hired as opening act in 1964. And so I'm working with them in depth. And so I felt at this time the thing to do was stop the fight if we could, try to rebuild a relationship, and go on with the Statlers. So from that we went to 9 years of TV, #1 records, one right after another. We had a great run. And John and I weren't enemies. but we weren't friends. And it remained that way through the years until in 1997, when he was forced to retire. He had no choice. These amphetamines and etc. had destroyed every vital organ in his body. It was a matter of time, and so he came in off the road, and I read a little article in the Nashville paper one morning when I was in Nashville, that he had come off the road and was in the hospital. So I called June, and I said, June, how is he? And she told me, a long story, she told me. And so I said, well, just tell him I called. And so she said, I will. So the next morning she called and said, Marshall, he wants to see you. I said, good. I said, tomorrow is off. We were setting up for a Christmas show. The next day, which was a Wednesday, she said he would love to see you. And I said, well, tomorrow at any time. So she called me back a little bit and said, how about 10 o'clock? I said, that's good. So I walked in the room. He ordered everybody out of the room and out of the setting room so where we could be by ourselves. And within 30 seconds, we had buried the hatchet. We became this close friends that we were. We didn't have to talk about it. I didn't have to apologize to him. He didn't have to apologize to me. It was all said in 25 words, and it was all past tense. It was all history. It was all gone. We were back. And from then on, we picked up on our relationship where it was when it was great and made it even greater. And until his dying day, he was back my blood brother. We talked every day about sometimes about foolish things and sometimes about very serious things, but he knew he was going to die. He had already been told. And so I'm just so thankful that it ended the way that it did as far as our relationship was concerned. But John should still be thriving, hitting on all 8 cylinders. And he would have if it hadn't been for the drugs. So I say to all people, entertainers, sportsmen or what, if you want to go the route that a great, great, great man went, you're going to die. If you want to go the other route, you can be successful. John was successful in spite of himself, but it was the people around him, and me being one of them. But after I left, things went down, 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 until he got on his knees and couldn't get back up. And then the grave. So I can say a great, great, great man lies in the cemetery in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I couldn't have said that if the time hadn't come where we put it back together. But believe me, we put it back together. There's no animosity. I'm still very close with all members of his family. And I wish June and Vivian were still here, but unfortunately they're not. There's too many of them gone. But with that, I say, I hope you enjoy what we've done here.